folks. Thanks for joining us again for another episode of Fierce Feminine Magick, conversations with passionate women sharing their fire. And I am very honored today to be joined by Allison Kennedy of Source and See. Allison is an intuitive guide. No. Did I say that right?
You can say it however you want.
Intuitive guidance, spiritual wisdom. I'm not sure exactly how to frame it at this moment. Like I just went blank. But you offer all of this wonderful spiritual guidance and intuitive insight. And I have experienced that in interacting with you. And I just wanted to say that one of the things that I love about my experience of you is that you bring forward the guidance that you bring forward in like a no bullshit fun way. You make it so approachable. And I really appreciate that about you. So I just want to start by asking you to share anything that you feel inspired to share about your own journey of coming to being a healer and being an intuitive guide, and just what that has meant for you. Share your story a bit with us.
Yeah. And what's great about sharing my story is I feel like I learn something about sharing my story every time I share my story. And I always share something new or different. So it's a beautiful path. It's, I have to admit, I was really blessed with, my parents were kind of hippies. They opened health food stores when I was 9, and they were the only health food stores for, I think, 100 miles or something crazy. And that was in the 90s. And to me, in a way, at that kind of age, and when there's that kind of wisdom, because it wasn't just supplements and tofu. My mom sold Ram Dass books, spiritual color healing books. So for me, I held on to, like at 9, if I picked up a color healing book, that really allowed me to hold on to these experiences that most of us are already having when we're born and young. We're very psychically open. Some of us more than others, we have different karma, different reasons for different things, but I really think that we all have access to these, astral spaces and intuitive guidance within ourselves. And totally. it always gets blocked. And, so my childhood wasn't perfect. My dad was pretty emotionally and verbally abusive. And, when you grow up with that in a young age, you don't know anything different. But at the same time, I also didn't know anything different with the spiritual stuff either. So it was a very unique kind of combination of naturally settling into this observation space. My mom used to do meditations with me before I would fall asleep, but it still didn't get me out of, the typical problems that a very sensitive or empathic kid would have. I used to have insomnia because there were these big light beings in my room. And, I was going to church until First Communion, 7 years old, Catholic. So to me, that meant I was dying. I was going to die. And I'm like 12 years old and freaking out, and, it just all sorts of visions and things, and fearing death, because I knew that that's what it meant. Whatever these experiences meant, it meant death. And that was bad.
Don't go to the light, right?
Yeah, right. Exactly. It's like, oh yeah, don't go to the light. So then it's like, what? How does that work again? That's pretty scary if you're believing that. So it was terrifying. I was terrified. I had panic attacks during the day because I would feel so much energy. And I think this is a lot of people in the world right now, especially in America and the West. People are sensitive, and we're not seeing the alternative to the typical just go take a pill. Mm-hmm. And so there's a beautiful long line of immersion in alternative health and wellness and spiritual well-being for most of my life. And it's been more of a challenge for me to realize what I know than to try to go learn more. It's like, oh wait, I could already be teaching someone stuff. So, I didn't even realize that I knew this and this and this and this and this, and all these essential oils I grew up with. I mean, tea tree is like something I never have known a day without tea tree oil. So it's like, for me, it's been more of a struggle of the confidence. And I think most of us have that when we realize that our craziness is actually our gift. And when it's like, oh, wait a second, the world needs this more than anything. The world needs this feminine intuitive magic more than anything right now. How do I step into that? How do I go forward? But even naturally, before I had all that, I kind of was just getting a lot of intuitive guidance. I think I was maybe 19 when I left my house in upstate New York and decided to go. I was going to try to go to the UC Santa Cruz. And I get out there with my car packed full of stuff and meet a bunch of rainbow hippie kids and start traveling around the country to concerts and festivals. And I did that for maybe like 6 to 7 or 8 months. It felt like a lifetime now.
That's an education in and of itself.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. And then it keeps going because I met this couple and on tour somewhere in Georgia or something. And they're like, they came up to me and they're just like, you need to go to Kauai. You need to go to Hawaii. You need to be camping with us. Come out there. And I'm just like, what? And how did you know? I was dreaming about Hawaii since I was like 8 years old. I had these visions of exactly what I see today because I live in Hawaii. I see these like, you know, pastures with cows and rainbows. And I just had these visions. I was obsessed with Polynesia stuff. To me, I was tuning into, you know, my higher path. And so I just like listened to them. I sold all my stuff and I packed up my backpack. I sold my car, had the cash in my pack. But I, of course, was rebellious. They're like, we're going to go to Kauai. Come with us. We'll show you the beach that we're going to stay on and you can camp. And I was like, I want to go to Maui first. I want to go to Maui. Because I just wanted to be by myself. You know, I was like 19. I wanted to be like the independent girl traveler and go like try to organic farm somewhere. So I met someone on the plane and she was like, yeah, let's go to this organic farm. It's amazing. You're going to love it. You can stay there. And I'm like, cool. And this guy picks us up, takes us out there, and it turns out it's like this kind of smoothie stand for tourists. And like I get there, there's no food growing. And I was just like, are you kidding? And so I ended up selling smoothies to tourists. And I was like, okay, like, look, I did not come out here to this most magical fucking feminine place on the planet to serve tourists. Like I'd rather be living for free on the beach like my friends. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to pack up. I'm going to leave here. I called a friend that I had known from like these concerts that was so flaky that I could barely rely on him, but he was going to come pick me up. I go close up the smoothie stand for the last time. Everything's packed up. Took me like 5 minutes. I come back and my backpack and everything gone. Everything. The $1,500 from my car, my passport, my crystals, my books, my camera. I had this nice, you know, back then it was like the nice Canon camera for black and white photography and stuff. And I mean, it was my whole life, except I had this little, like, one of my hippie friends made this little, like, pouch, you know, with a peppermint essential oil, a crystal, and my cell phone. Like, you know, those old cell phones. And I was like, what the fuck? And I had this weird moment where I knew that it was, like, the divine. I just like knew. So I didn't break down.
You just got stripped down.
I was just like, this is what I wanted. Like, I came here for this kind of shit. Like, now what? You know, the mystery, like, here I am. And I was so immersed in Taoism and very, you know, riding the edge kind of spirituality back then. So it was so amazing. But of course, the next day I'm like crying and, you know, my passport, how would I even get on a plane? Like all this stuff. And I get a phone call on my cell phone, and it's my friends on Kauai calling from a payphone, mind you. Back then it was
they actually had payphones. Yeah.
They're calling me from a payphone saying, what's wrong? We feel like something happened to you. And I'm like, are you fucking kidding? Because I couldn't reach them. So it's like, I had to just like, you know, I was just in the unknown, and they're like, get over here. We have everything you need. Just get on a plane. I don't even know how I got on a plane. I can't even remember. Some paperwork, something. Went to the police and they said it was stolen. Something happened. My mom gives this angel guy, because my friend basically picks me up and drops me off in town. And was like, good luck.
Right.
And I'm like, are you kidding? And I met this angel who still lives on the island, who I still run into 13 years later. Take me in and just let me stay there and shower and whatever. Total angel. And so my mom like gave him some cash, wired him some cash, you know, got me on the plane. And so I ended up on Kauai, and I had literally the best 8 months, I think, of my life. And I was a 19-year-old, just turned 20-year-old, fairy, totally like not grounded at all, way out there, just like totally getting downloads and seeing miracles. And like, it was crazy. And it was enough because I was sleeping under the stars and stuff, and we would just watch the stars for hours. And it was like getting a PhD in the cosmos and this just the astral, and especially Kauai because it's the third eye. All the islands kind of correlate with chakras, which is pretty cool. So it just changed everything. And I ended up going to massage school after that because I had a pretty gnarly black magic experience, and I was crying every day after that, and I was really struggling. And so I tried to do a yoga training, but that didn't work. That was in Mexico or something. I was just like I was just so lost. And so I can really relate to people when they're there. But at the same time, it was like, it took this having to fight against my wounds, because my wounds kept dragging me back, just not feeling confident, not feeling like I could do it. Self-sabotaging stuff, but thinking I was righteous and, whatever, calling it spiritual. I did all of it. I've bypassed, I did all of that shit. That's why I can talk about it now, because I really know that it's a tricky thing because I had great intentions. I didn't mean to run away and hide from myself. But eventually it was massage school. I almost didn't go. It was the third day I finally made it, because I just kept trying to get up and go, because there was some sort of black magic demon shit happening. Like, it was bad. It was really bad. It took me about a year to recover from that. And that's another reason why I love helping people avoid manipulative teachers and manipulative healers and the fakes and the phonies, because that's very real. And it's also important, I think, to talk about how to protect our energy and to be very honest about that. I think, well, because that was the weird
people
thing.
Talk so much about, you're talking about being like such a fairy, you were so wide open and all that, which is like beautiful and awesome. But like, you also is like, you've got to have that protection. And you obviously got a nasty lesson in how essential that is. Yeah.
And literally to the point where the storyline, it's like a dark witch came and deceived the maiden, it's just so archetypical. Mm-hmm. And I didn't see it until years later. I literally didn't know it was black magic until years later, because it was so hard to heal from it. It was so obvious. Like, the only reason why I really got over it, because there was a point where I was probably easily could have spiraled out, where I maybe couldn't have come out of it. I mean, it's like, things can get that dark, especially with spiritual pain. So, I mean, just to share, this woman was so manipulative, and I finally figured out that she had a dark heart. Like, I saw her heart was dark. Yeah. Finally, I was like, okay, that was the sign. And I literally was like, thank you. I honor you. Thank you for showing me some of your practices and your ways. I'm going to be going on my own way now. Thank you so much. She's like, okay, it's not like I'm going to tap you on the head 3 times and everything goes black. And I was like, what? And she tapped me on the head 3 times, and all of the life force of the universe disappeared. I'm not even joking. My crystals were dead. The wind, there was no wind. Everything was just dead. It's like literally like in Stranger Things. I don't know if you watched that on Netflix, but it's like they're in the same place, but it's this dark, place. Couldn't hear. I
haven't seen it, but I totally am getting visual.
Yeah. And so, and it's not even a real place. Like, it is and it isn't. And that's what got me out of it was my mom being like, who was a total healer coach. She actually has a great podcast for anxiety now, and it's amazing. So she's been one of my biggest teachers, but she basically was like, Allie, where is this lady? Where is she? You're giving it so much power. And I was like, whoa. She had me so manipulated that she just had me looping in my own loop. And her expectation was that I would never get out of it, right? And just wither away or whatever. Who knows what she wanted. But for me, it was like, oh, well, I better start working on not letting that suck me back. And I saw it, how it was my own wounds from childhood, how that could have easily made me really airy-fairy, because I wanted to avoid the root chakra. I wanted to avoid those emotions and the fears. And so I see that in people like that now. And it's really great, because I'd rather tell my story and let people say, whoa, maybe I am just avoiding my root chakra stuff. Maybe I just need some help getting through that. And instead of a year of daily crying and traveling around and being homeless and trying to figure your life out, like, it's a scary place. And I feel like, I swear, it was like, oh my God, this is too divine. Like, this story is so perfectly told that of course I couldn't have protected myself from that, because it was meant to be. Like, and so that's the other thing too. I believe we should totally protect ourselves, but also not give it so much power where we're like, I have to protect myself. And like, it's almost like you're giving the evil a lot of power too. So it's like, there's evil and there's oneness and there's all of it. So just to notice our balance with it. And that's all we can do, because we all have different balances with it. And
absolutely. And then the journey that you had to go on in terms of like, reclaiming your power and all of that, then you received through that experience the tools to help other people.
Yeah.
I can so relate to that with my own journey. And I think that any of us that really are true healers have gone through hell and back. I mean, it takes that crazy dark nights of the soul.
Yeah.
I would venture to say there is not a true healer on the planet that hasn't been through hell and back, or they would not have the tools to do it. Right.
And that's why I think when we're looking for phonies, we're looking for fakes, it's about asking their story. It's about asking them, how did you become a healer? Because I think you can get certified in a lot of things. And I think you can, have a lot of different teachers and that's great. But the additional extra sauce that we really got to make sure is that they've been through the fire. They've been through it and they're willing to go back into it. Because that's the thing. I don't know about you, but I also don't know a healer that's healed.
Right.
We're all healing. And that's the journey. And that's the beauty of the feminine to me. It takes that pedestal syndrome out of the picture. Because if we really are in divine feminine, we're equal. Like we're sisters.
Totally. I'm always so leery of anyone who has this mentality of they've got it all figured out. They have all the answers. They're like somehow ascended beings, or something. It's just like, I'm always like, woo, no, not going to go there.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's a fine line to walk, because sometimes we'll be like, oh my God, I just got this download and I feel like I know all this stuff. And then the universe will be like, psh, like just going to humble you up real quick and let you know that, some things, and that's great. But this is an infinite spectrum of experience. And to see what's been happening for me in my own personal journey lately, and business is very much a mirror for me too. So it's like, whoa, to have that be my spiritual practice right now has been really very adventuresome. But to really see how it can go so black or white, everything, like your beliefs about spirituality, like we can go way too far into the positive. Like I was saying earlier, I was so airy-fairy because I feared the dense and the dark. But in shamanism, in real spiritual healing, you can't condemn and deny that. That actually makes it much worse. Yeah. And it takes that bravery of, like we were saying, going through the fire of seeing it and experiencing it and knowing that it's part of our journey and accepting it and loving it. And then it doesn't have that power over you. Just like with that lady. It's like, if I had just been like, oh my goodness, what a blessing. Thank you for that. And really, and of course I wouldn't have meant the same if it was that quick. I was meant to really be challenged by that and go through the mud with that. So I could grow into the lotus and be like, look, oh my gosh, you don't have to, but it's not airy fairy fly. It's rooted. It's still in the mud. It's still rooted in the darkness. It's okay. And I think that's honestly, this is where it gets so disappointing. It turns into this whole spiritual consumerism thing, where the only way that they're thinking they can sell stuff is to make these really hyper positive promises, where you can't promise anything in spirituality. I can promise that you're not going to know shit like that. I can promise you that. Like, we're not going to ever really know. Mm-hmm. So, and then people are like, well, why would you do it? Like, why would you be on the path? That's why. Because we're constantly trying to know. The ego just literally, so if you relax that, if we can learn how to surrender into that more, then it doesn't have as much power. Then you become the power over your life, but not in the sense of what people are using to sell shit. Like, you have all the responsibility of your whole life and everything that happens in the universe. I'm like, that's some Scientology bullshit. Like, no, I don't. Like, yeah, I'm a powerful God-like being, but if you're going to give me all the power, you better believe I'm humbling myself to a higher power all day long. That's what I do. That's how I heal.
I love that you're touching on that, because that's something that has been up for me lately and has been coming up for people I've been working with too. And it's this idea that everything that happens to us, everything that's happening to us, that we somehow are attracting it because we're like, if we don't like it, it's because we're not thinking the right thoughts and we're not focused enough on the positive. And my mom even, so I got to tell you, it's so cool to hear more of your story than I've heard before, because my parents were like hippies and my mom was born in Hawaii, actually, even though I've never.
Oh my gosh, how cool.
She was born on Oahu. Wow. And you make me want to look up the chakra thing, because I don't even think I knew that.
Yeah, like, it's been a lot of my own research, but yeah, it's pretty amazing.
But she even, she's given me so many gifts and so much insight, but I was going through a tough time recently, and she's like, Amber, you just got to think positive. You just got to be positive, all this stuff. And I just want to say, fuck positive. And I mean, fuck trying to be positive all the time, because that is not the answer. There's more going on here. There is so much more. And I think that the law of attraction, for example, is so beautiful in so many ways and so legitimate in so many ways, but it's not like the only spiritual law or the whole story.
No, literally people are saying like, that's it. And I'm like, that's dogma. Like, that's dogma. And I'm just, to me, it's really kind of beautiful in a way, because as people who are on the path for a long time, grown up in some alternative spaces, it's like, oh, look at these little babies. They're evolving. Like, they're like shown this thing in their logic, like The Secret or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, by the way, I remember the scene that just cracked me up was when the chick walks by the jewelry store, looks at the necklace, and it just appears on her neck.
Right.
And I'm like, yeah, because like telling the mass America that right now is such a smart thing. Like, we're just going to all go around from our ego desires, wishing I had this, I want this, and I want this, and I want this. And a lot of people don't know that one of the authors from The Secret went to jail for killing people in his sweat lodges. Yeah, this is important to know.
I didn't know that.
It's disturbing, but it's important to know. So,
wow.
What's his name? I don't know, just look up sweat lodge deaths in Arizona with The Secret. So this is how dumb people are getting. And it's not to like hate on them though, because I'm about education, people. And I also, because I've been seeing that online lately, there's like this idea that in order to educate someone, you have to bully them. And I just think that's trying to beat a kid in order to teach a lesson. It just doesn't work.
Yeah.
You got to really get over yourself in a way to really have conversations that can get somewhere, or like, see someone's other side. So what was I saying before that? For the stuff, because I got distracted.
I remember Airy Fairy. I remember Black Magic.
I know. See, you're like me. We're so in the moment. Then it's like, sometimes when that happens, I'm like, okay, what am I supposed to talk about? Tell me what you want me to talk about then. Because I'm just like, why did I space out?
Well, unless you remember, let me say one other thing that came up for me when you were talking that I wanted to come back to circle back to. And that was, you were talking about how you were very like awake and aware as a child, which I think so many of us are, even if we don't remember it. I think a lot of people forget how tuned in they were. And then at some point we get scared, we shut it down to protect ourselves or whatever. And then also there can come this point on the path where we start to like wake up to it again, like when you were in your airy fairy place or whatever, and then we still, even as people that grew up in this kind of stuff, there's still this this fear, this societal fears, this, you know, maybe it's past life stuff, all of that. But I know that for me, I was wide open as a kid, and then I shut it all down. And then when I started going through my spiritual awakening again, which was really only about 5 years ago, and it started with being in like massive pain and craziness and all of this stuff. And then I started having visions, and then I started waking up to my guides, and then like all of this stuff. And I remember thinking when it was happening, I can't ever tell anyone about this or they'll think I'm crazy. No one will understand. And here I am now, years later, realizing that this is exactly the things that I need to be sharing, that people need to be hearing, because there are so many people out there that are beginning to go through their own version that are going, what the fuck is going on?
Right.
And I just kind of wanted to circle back to that piece that you were sharing, because I think it's just so.
Well, I even had my own painful awakenings. Like, for example, when like a week after my 16th birthday, or was it my 17th? My 17th birthday, my brother, and of course I woke up right before the call came, and I said, there's something wrong with my brother. He fell from 6 stories and he survived, and he's fine. So, I mean, he has like a little bit of a brain injury, but it's not like, you know, he got through college after that. And so it's one of those things where to have these, and also, like I said, the childhood, like, and for me, that's another thing that working with, you know, healing, I think a lot of people think like, oh, let me just like find this one bad thing that happened to me, or these couple bad things that happened to me, and I'll just do some like hypnotherapy and then I'll be fine. And it's like this quick fix it kind of thing, even in the new agey spiritual stuff. And for me, I think that's why I had to kind of drag things on, to see that the whole time it was right in front of me. And it really isn't about getting rid of anything, because you're never going to get rid of your wounds. You're never going to get rid of what happened to you. It's what made you who you are to tell your story, so it heals people. If people only knew what gifts our shit was, like, seriously. And I think that's another radical thing that I really believe in, is our pain is a gift. It's like a full-on downloaded gift. And, you know, that's another red flag for like bad, you know, kind of shisty, shady healer type people, is if they're telling you that, like, for example, I have a client that went to some like angelic Reiki tunement thing or something, workshops. The guy like called her out in front of the whole group to put her down for having chronic illness, saying like, you're not ascended enough and you're not doing the right work and you're not, and I'm going, wait a second.
I've heard that shit myself. Personally.
I'm like, wait, right. And I'm going, I don't know what kind of karma I have to be so blessed to have come across the real teachers that taught me that illness is actually a gift. And if you have chronic illness, most healers have some sort of chronic illness or something they're dealing with. Why? Because you have to understand what it's like to heal yourself in order to teach other people to heal themselves, because that's the whole other thing. As much as I can do some energy work and provide space, that doesn't last unless the person's doing their own sustaining of the work. And so that basically is a red flag. If someone's doing that, it's a huge red flag that they're on this pedestal thing. And pedestal syndrome and know-it-all syndrome it's basically like chakra-wise, why healers have that. It's because if you have an overactive third eye, it turns into control and manipulation. So it's like, and if you're dealing with other messed up solar plexus stuff or whatever, but when people, and just like the black magic lady for me, she was very aware. I mean, I don't know, maybe part of her wasn't, but I'm pretty sure she was really aware of what she was doing. She was very controlling, you know, telling me that's your ego when it was actually my intuition, you know, just crossing the wires so that they can have this control over you, and that they have the power and that they're feeling that false sense of power. But in black magic, it is sort of real power, you know, even though it's false, it's still real. And she did have my power for a long time. And she actually, I was working alongside a friend who introduced her to me, who is still kind of cuckoo and sucked in. I remember running into her and being like, yeah, can you believe we got like sucked into that bullshit? And she was like, she's a very powerful teacher, you know? And I'm just like, ah, you're still in there. And I was just like, you know, doing my work and just being like, okay, gotta go, bye.
And it's amazing how even, you know, I think we've had these experiences to help us have those yield signs and those cautions. Like, I know I am very adamant in my work, and I do my best to check myself constantly. And thank God I'm not perfect, but
right.
I don't want people to put me on a pedestal, because I've seen that and I've experienced it. And even the teachers that I had a spiritual teacher for years who I learned so much from. I got so many tools and insight and wisdom that I still utilize today. However, at some point I realized that I had been to some extent indoctrinated into a cult.
Right.
Like, you know, because it was like, I mean, you like to the point of our languaging, like having to speak a certain way in order to be conscious and all of this stuff. And it's like, wait a minute, there's way too many boundaries and boxes, and this particular person is the seat of knowledge for all of this. And it's like, wait a minute, no. I think it's all about figuring out how it is that we go direct, and how it is that we help other people figure out how to go direct. And that's what I see you doing in your work too.
Oh, that's such a compliment. Cause I'm like you, I'm like really working hard. And so that's why it gets to be like this, the wind gets taken out of me if I'm perceived in a different way. But that's also a very natural thing too, when you're a mover and a shaker, or if you're holding up the mirror for people, especially with social media. I don't know, I'm still learning how to drive this thing. It's like, oh man, I need to keep getting more safer spaces, you know, safer and safer spaces, because there are different opinions and there's different things to do for different spiritual paths. And I'm not trying to teach that my spiritual path should be everyone's spiritual path. All I do is offer options and open the mind, like, because that's what we're constantly doing. The ego just constantly makes us close. So we're having to, that's what daily practice is working against that, like in a way, or with it in a way too, if you're into Aikido, right?
The black and white, the balance, the yin and the yang, it's all of it.
Yeah. So it's beautiful. And I think that it takes guts though to really sit in that neutral place, because we get excited and we think we know that it's this and this. Even myself, right? I'm human. Like I said, I've been through all of these things. I was the spiritual bypasser. I had spiritual ego. I had, you know, I was ungrounded, airy-fairy, all of it. I mean, even with the online business stuff, I got sucked into weird coaching, thinking that you have to know the right people and you have to have the right programs and all these things. And it's just like, what if I just listen to my own guidance? Like I've been telling myself and teaching other people all along. I need to taste my own medicine here.
And I've been being reminded of those things, you know, again. And like you said, it's like, it reminds me, you know, talking about the challenge we go through too. It's like, there's this thing, and I've been there and I've heard it from people I've worked with. It's like, when is this going to be over? When is this going to be over? And, you know, I get to a point where I chuckle and, you know, and I'm like, you know, maybe never, you know, it's like, it's a continuing, it's a process. And I have to, but then when I get into my own junk and I'm like having to deal with my own shadow work again and things are coming up, I have to do my best to remind myself or look to those people that I feel like I know I can trust some of their insight and wisdom, like a person like you, and get reminded of, oh yeah, just because I'm like back down in it again, doesn't mean that I'm somehow like everything else doesn't matter and I've somehow failed and I'm totally off course. It's a process.
This brings it back a little bit up to where I was going before with spiritual consumerism, because if you think about it, if you're not taught to like accept that place, you're taught to go buy something to get out of that. So in a way, the people that are using spiritual stuff to just make money, that's their flow. So that's where it's like we can empower each other and our clients and people that are buying stuff and wanting that spiritual feminine piece or whatever. We teach that, avoid the teachers that are promising the positive, bright light. What I say is like, activate your purpose. Like your purpose doesn't have to be anything but being in the moment. Like what if your purpose means being guided And what if one moment they say one thing and the other you say the other? Your purpose is to learn about that. It's not necessarily to do one or the other, right? So learn about, and you know, I think a lot of these trendy terms, but at the same time, a lot of them, it's like, gosh, they're using all of my terms. It's like, whatever. I'm not going to do this thing where people can, that's giving them power, right? If you're saying like, oh, now I can't use aligned because some weird fake person was using aligned. No, in a sense, like I should be feeling even more empowered to step up with that because it's authentic, because I know what I'm doing, because I've had years of experience. And I think that's when it makes me sad, and why it makes me also inspired to do more of my work to help other healers, because I see that the real ones are the quietest and the most humble, and the ones that don't want to charge for their work. And so they can't really make a business out of it, so they don't do it. And so like, and I'm like, but we need the real people. We need the ones that are like actually doing heart-centered work. And it's like the hardest to be boasting about ourselves and be like, hey, buy my stuff. It's like, we don't want to do that. It's like, no, I'm humble, and I just want to help people. And so that's another thing of like, recognize that just because we're taught to, you know, believe that some of these amazing healers have to cost $5,000 or something. What if the amazing ones are like the $150 little sessions and they're just doing their thing? And I mean, to me, that's been my experience. My healers are not super duper duper expensive. They offer great, you know, like offers and retreats and whatever, but it's not this like, look at me, I'm going to make $1 billion trillion and you can learn how to be a healer like me and all this stuff where it's just like, and the manifest $1 million. What kind of promise is that? That wouldn't even necessarily make people happy.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
I totally am with you. I think it's an interesting fine line. Like there's these sides of the spectrum. Like, you know, there's people that are charging like so much exorbitant amounts of money that it just makes you go, huh? And then at the same time, you know, there are those people that have a hard time charging anything, which I've been there because I have such a giving heart, and I know you can relate.
Yeah.
And yet what you find is that what I have found is that the sessions and the work that I've given away for free, while they had value and while people got stuff out of them, they get so much more out of it when they invest in it. So much more. And so I find myself continuously kind of like figuring out, navigating that space between making sure I'm charging something that is reasonable, that also supports me in continuing to be able to do my work, but is also like not outlandish. And it can be tricky.
And to me, it took like 1.5 years, you know, and it's still refining itself, because for me with the online stuff, and because what you're saying too, it's not just about like the actual numbers. It's about when I realized that the model of just charging one-off session wasn't going to sustain me. I also realized that that's not what the clients needed. Like, yeah, I'm really intuitive and I can do just like a psychic reading and be done. But what I'm really great at is like the connecting with people, helping them see the whole big picture of like, and like we were saying too, being able to sustain it, being able to walk away with their own tools, which would integrate so much more if they had, you know, a few sessions, or could like plan on coming to the retreat and some sessions and really get to know, you know, and then you get to meet me, like then it's real. Because that's the other trick about this social media online stuff. Like obviously the promises can be very false and big, and also the work can also not come through. I think there's a lot of people out there that don't even deliver anything and just charge tons of money. And I'm like, and then here I am feeling bad about offering this next program, even though it's like probably what everyone's been wanting. And, you know, so we have to watch that doubt and know, okay, yeah, sometimes it helps me make sure I'm doing a really good job, especially in my sessions. It like keeps me so refined about not getting in the way of whatever is coming through.
Yeah.
But then there's parts when it's like, that's not helping you, sister. Like, let's put that a little bit aside and actually, you know, do your work and say, hey, this is what I'm offering. And then you can really gain a lot of confidence. And I think that's the other thing too. It's scary to do it, especially to do it before you feel confident, but usually you don't really feel confident until you do it. So it's kind of that catch-22.
Yeah.
But I think it's the same even if you're not a healer, but you're healing yourself. You face that kind of like fear of like taking that leap into like, who am I going to be without these wounds? Like, who am I going to be without at least letting them control me and my life?
Oh my goodness, yes. I'm at a whole nother level of that again, some more right now.
Me too. I think a lot of us
Well,
are Mercury direct and
yeah.
a lot of stuff.
Well, Allie, it's been really, really wonderful. I got to tell you, I was on your website, Source and See. Everybody go check it out. And your whole thing with the retreat kind of in Hawaii and like all of that, it's got me excited. I'm looking into that. So
I know. Oh, I'm doing one in April on the Big Island. I just went there for a few days because I had a dream about this bay, and all the dream was the bay and a voice saying, "You will have a retreat here."
Wow.
I mean, I'm not used to those kinds of dreams. Usually it's like I'm off in the Pleiades or something. And it was just so like, oh, this is a message. Thank you. And I went to the bay, and it was just like the most beautiful energy. And it's like this bay where the dolphins sleep during the day and the whales come. And April is like right at the end of whale season when it's supposed to be the best. And I just talked to a friend today who's like a coconut tree climber. He wants to take us to Waipio Valley into lava tubes. So if you want to come in April.
Oh my God, it's pure magic.
It's exciting. It's definitely been my biggest calling and like what I get the most excited about is like having people here and just experience the healing of the land. Because that's the same with our healing sessions, right? Like getting out of the way. It's the same. The islands have so much healing feminine power. It's literally supposedly the most feminine place on the planet out here. So.
Oh, I love that. Well, I'm definitely hearing that at some point I'm going to make it out there.
Heck yeah.
And I'm totally going to hang with you.
I would love to have you out here. It'd be so awesome.
Really, really looking forward to that. Yay. All right. Well, it has been so much for having me.
I know. Such a good chat.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for joining us. Please go make sure and check out her website and all the wonderful intuitive guidance and wisdom yumminess that Allie has to offer.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.